Hey, greetings, friends. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the Let's Get Gritty podcast with yours truly, Dr. India White. I'm thrilled to be here with you this evening. I hope that life is working out for you. I hope you enjoyed the solar eclipse. I hope that doors are opening and that you're able to finish being gritty on particular assignments and particular projects because the best is yet to come for you always. So, with that said, I want to take a moment and just give you a couple of announcements. First off, the Let's Get Gritty podcast will be featured on Swain Girl Media channel, hosted by Precious Swain, and it'll also be on Spotify, so you can watch it there. You can also watch it on social media, all of my different social media channels, which are listed behind me. So there's that. I also wanted to take a moment and remind you guys of my social media handles. If you would like to follow me, you've got Facebook is Miss India White, LinkedIn is The India White, Twitter is Indie Speak and Teach, Instagram is Indie238, YouTube is India White 123, and TikTok is Dr. India White, and Threads is Indie238. So I also wanted to remind you guys of the Grit Mini workshop that just launched on the Grassroots Workshops website. They're doing a lot of work on the Grassroots Workshop platform. Please visit it. You'll see the workshop is titled How to Harness Grit to Help Students Thrive. Lots of nuggets in that, and go over there when you get a chance. Check it out, because I did my best to love on you guys and to give you the truth when it comes down to really harnessing grit in students. And I hope that you're enjoying it. And for those that have already bought the website or the workshop, thank you for your support. Please provide feedback, because I would love to hear how it's helping you in the classroom and how it's helping your students. I also wanted to remind you guys of a couple of announcements regarding different events. So we've got Minnesota conference that's happening this weekend. I will be there as a featured speaker. I'm excited to connect with many of you. And in Wisconsin, I'll be there in May as a keynote speaker at the Wisconsin Math Council Conference. So please do not be a stranger. Reach out, say hello. Let's, get to know each other, ask your questions, bring your tough questions. And hey, you never know. I might be giving some things out during these sessions for those that come and watch me and hear what I have to say. I'm going to give you guys my all. So I'm looking forward to seeing you. Now, wanting to be on this podcast, to send me your photo and a bio at india.white.123@gmail.com. Okay, so I can get you scheduled. Also, my website has new things going on. Check out the blog section. There are books. There are opportunities for you to schedule me for your event. I am here for you guys, and I cannot wait to be connected. So with that said, today's show, I wanted to focus on teachers and administrators, but more so teachers, those that are dealing with your students that are finishing the school year. And right now they are really starting to hunker down and get it done. Many students will come to you wanting to make up assignments from August. Many students will, ask if they can make up 30 assignments in 2 days. Their grit starts to kick in, and these students are doing this because they want to be successful. So with that said, I'm going to talk about us as leaders and how we can teach accountability through grit in the classroom. Now, I know I focus on, math or whatever, but today I'm just going to focus in general on all teachers that are dealing with our students. And I hope family members can also hear this, because I think our goal right now is to really help our seniors to thrive and be successful. I can tell you, I'm thankful for the teachers that I had in my personal life that really helped me to be gritty. And when I talk about grit, I talk about great resilience in time. Dr. Duckworth, she also coined it to be having passion and perseverance to obtain a long-term goal. And so when you're talking about building resilience and building grit in students, it is imperative that you understand where they are when it comes down to how they're planning for, their senior year. How can they become accountable? Because some students don't know how to be accountable and how to get the job done, how to stick to specific tasks at hand so that they can cross the finish line. So we're going to talk about accountability for seniors. will give tips and stories. One story I'll start with is, my senior year, I remembered because I was homeless, I had to apply for scholarships. And I remember my guidance counselor came to me and she's like, "Hey, India, we've got all these scholarships. Would you like to apply?" And I'm like, "Scholarships? Like, I mean, I don't know. I can go for it and see." But I was telling them, I was like, "I don't think I can go to college because I don't have any money." I mean, I was a first generation student. It was just a very unfortunate situation. And but I can tell you, I found hope through scholarships. But then I had so much thrown at me at that time. I had college applications and trying to decide which college to go to, trying to decide which deadline to meet. So it was imperative that I had a couple of things to help me. So one, I had to get a calendar, like a physical calendar that I could write out those assignments in. Then I had to get a bunch of manila envelopes and stamps, because back in the day, we weren't submitting applications like that online when it came down to scholarships, not that many. So many of my applications were paper applications. So I had to get all of the tools that I needed to be successful. As a result, I did get 18 scholarships, including a full ride from Bill Gates. And here we go. I'm telling you this because I would not have been able to do that on my own. There was a tribe. There was someone that said, we have to go to the store and get her stamps. We have to get her manila envelopes. We have to remind her of these deadlines. We need the tribe to raise up in this hour to help our students. It's too late if we're starting in May or June. We have to start before then, especially if students are trying to go to school in the fall. As you'll see, many students are already getting scholarship awards back. Many students have already received their acceptance letters for college. And hey, if you're one of those that you're like, oops, we just totally forgot, we just totally behind, no rush, no worries. But what you need to do is definitely start looking at plan B. Do you need to start in a community college and then transfer into a 4-year university? Or what is the field of interest for that student? Are they going into armed services? What's going on? Figure out what it takes for that particular student to be successful. So with that said, I did find some things on here to help us to use grit, great resilience in time, as we enforce expectations and hold our students accountable. And I'm now going to share my screen with you guys and talk about some of these things that I found that I thought was really neat. First things first, we're going to talk about increasing student accountability. So this came from teachhub.com. This is a good resource for you teachers. And so this is written by Jessica Schaefer in 2021. And so she says here, student accountability, it's important because it encourages students to take responsibility for their learning, okay, and for their actions. Okay, students in turn, they'll learn to value their work and they'll likely increase in their levels of confidence. And not just increasing in their levels of confidence, we want them to finish. We want them to persist. We want them to be successful. Okay. And so she's now going to talk about how to promote student accountability. So she says, first things first, create a just right learning environment. Again, create a just right learning environment for your students. Why? Because when you do this, this is going to have a classroom, listen, where students feel trusted, respected, and the safety, it creates an engaging learning environment. That's imperative because yes, we're trying to hold them accountable, but they have to also feel like they belong and they have to feel like they can be engaged and that there's some type of healthy competition to get some things done. Secondly, she says you've got to clear expectations. So when you're clearing expectations, you can create rubrics, excellent for projects and assignments for those students. Having clear written directions, listen, as well as verbal directions for all assignments are as important to ensure students understand what your expectations are. Now, listen, I've heard stories of educators that are teaching and they're not doing lesson planning. They have no notes for their student at all. So the student has nothing to even take home. Or if they give the notes, they don't explain the notes. So then the class becomes chaotic Whenever the class turns into a crowd and it sounds like you're at the fair or it sounds like you're at a football game, that means something went wrong with expectations. And so students don't even know how to be accountable because they don't know what your expectations are. I want to challenge all teachers and say, do your due diligence and have as much integrity as possible when you're teaching students to really break down the content. If you don't understand the content, and maybe you have to learn the content with the student, maybe you were removed from that particular math or that particular topic for a while. Okay, we understand, but you still have to do your part in learning and comprehending it so that you can help the students. This is why we get certified. This is why we get our credentials, because we're saying that we are experts in the field. We can teach your child. And it is an obligation of teachers to be able to hold true to that. We should not be set up in a situation where we're just throwing content at students, especially new curriculum, and we're not even teaching a student. We're not breaking it down, and we're just making the fish through it like they're in a college class, like they're working on a graduate level math class. That's not for K-12. K-12 students need that literacy. They need that fluency. They need that the numeracy. They need the conceptual understanding. They need all of those blocks that are going to build their knowledge so that as they're going through those progressions, they are going to be able to excel in our math classes and in all of our classes. But I want to point this out because I want to challenge teachers. Yes, hold students accountable, but also when you flip it, make sure that you've done your part in breaking down that curriculum so that students aren't confused, coming right out of the gate. Like they need some type of substance, some type of foundation so that they can start to explore the different options regarding the particular benchmarks that they're covering in your class. So with that said, let's get back to this article where they're talking about teaching accountability and increasing that. And so they're saying to clear those expectations, writing down those verbal directions for all of your assignments, having your due dates. Listen, this should not be a gotcha. When you're teaching students, there should not be a gotcha moment where you get excited as a teacher because they missed the deadline and they didn't know, or you're doing a million pop quizzes to see how you can get that student to fumble or to lower their grades. Like if you are doing that, I would highly advise that you really have a true introspection as to why you are in education and how you can become more of an advocate for all students. So here, have your due dates on Google Classroom, help them stay organized. And listen, it's not enough to listen. I'm going to stop sharing in a minute. I guess this is one of my soapboxes, is when we set students up for failure. It's not enough to say, oh, I posted it and, I posted it 3 weeks ago and, oh, well. You've got to get in the grind when you're trying to hold students accountable and keep them gritty. You also have to be gritty. You also have to be after them. You also have to be proactive. You have to advocate for them. You don't want them to miss the assignment. You don't want them to miss the deadline. You don't want them to fail during your pop quiz where you only covered, 2 out of the 10 topics on the pop quiz. You want them to win. Teachers must have an optimistic attitude. I want all my students to win. If we don't feel that way, we're doing education wrong. We have to feel as if we want every single student, no matter the background, no matter their socioeconomic status, no matter what they've got going on, I want all of my students to win. I think it's horrible when some educators gloat in the fact that they fail most of their kids, because I think they missed it. And one thing about education is, yes, you have to learn how to leverage. You have to learn how to give and take. You don't want to just give away A's and all that, but at the same time, you don't want to have a roster where you have 18 out of 20 of your kids have D's and F's. So I want to encourage you guys that as you're building accountability, make those deadlines plain and do your part to advocate. Remind them. Don't put it somewhere just on Google Classroom and not on the actual board. Don't leave parents out of the loop. Let parents know what's going on. Send a text message, send an email, do something. Send it 2 or 3, 4, 5, 8 times, however many times it takes for all students to get on board. That's what you should do. Because when you do this, this is how we set students up to be gritty and we set them up to win. So let's go back to the article and let's hear what they have to say as we're increasing student accountability. So here it's saying, you're having those clear expectations. You're having them to stay organized and on top of their assignments. You also have students to take ownership of their learning, which is excellent. And I think that's through journaling. You can have students make little gritty commitments to you as to what they're going to do to continue to increase their performance and their competency as they're learning in your class. And so also they talk about here, when students run into mistakes, that they have to understand that mistakes are one of the best ways that they can learn knowledge. So, don't be hard on themselves, but to understand it's a part of the learning process. And then, of course, having the self-assessment piece where, they can do thumbs up, thumbs down, they can do emojis. You can have them do that throughout. It's a very informal way to assess your students. And then, of course, here again, supporting the families is another way to help students to be accountable. Because when the parents are on board, they also have influence and they can help you, especially when you're dealing with like seniors, 8th graders, like students that are about to graduate and transition into that next grade level, that next school. It's imperative that we do our best to keep parents on board so that there aren't any surprises, at the end of the 9 weeks when, the student didn't meet the graduation requirement or this student's falling behind in credits. I don't know, this kid can be promoted. We have to do what we can to support our families. And so here it talks about setting in place the appropriate supports for each student and their families. It's imperative to their success, and it helps to gain support from families, exactly, in student accountabilities. There's nothing better than having parents that are on your side, that are cheering you on, that are telling you, hey, I spoke to, my child last night, and I just want to let you know we're on top of it. You will get those assignments in, or they will be studying tonight. It's a wonderful feeling. Many of these students as well, your athletes and whatnot. Yes, they might play a sport or they might whatever, but it's still imperative that they are still accountable in their academics, because we know that academics, it trumps over the sports when it comes down to education. And so, yes, we respect, what they do as athletes. We respect all that, but we have to also prioritize. And we know that if we're wanting to graduate, what is it that you can throw, a wonderful football, or you can dunk a basketball like nobody else, but then you can't graduate, So it's like we defeat the purpose of them being in school if we can't present to them a diploma or some type of showing that they've been proficient and that they're going on to success. So we have to still keep things in order. And we do that by holding students accountable and by getting parents in the community involved in their progress. So let's keep going. I thought this was just a very interesting article. She had a lot to say. She talked about student, parent, and teacher conferences. I don't understand why certain educators really avoid these. And I think this is like a golden nugget, and this is so powerful. She talks about here, perception is reality, and each party could be viewing the same situation differently. So when you're involving students in that problem-solving process, you're helping them to develop ownership. And it's so powerful whenever you do have parent and teacher conferences, because the student can come to the parent and say, oh my gosh, you wouldn't believe what my teacher said or what my teacher's doing to me. And this is so unfair. But then when you get all of the teachers on board and then you hear the real story, and then you can start gauging as a parent, oh, wait, this is what's really happening. Then it really helps the student to own, any places that they might have erred or any places that they're lagging in, and it helps them to become accountable. So it's imperative that we do our part in getting parents and the loved ones, guardians on board as we're helping our students to remain accountable. Now, with that said, I want to go into another article that I found that continues this narrative of student accountability and also just really motivating students, helping them to be gritty. because I'm telling you, we're wrapping up these 9 weeks. Students are making fresh commitments. And I think that if you're not having your students make commitments, I want to challenge you on that and say, how can you maybe starting next week, the fresh start of the next week, hey, you're going into a new 9 weeks. This is the time for you to commit and say, I'm going to get this grade in these particular classes. I'm going to go to college, or I'm going to go to the cert, like whatever their path is. And I'm going to make sure that I'm set up for success. We've got to do our part. Listen, I know we're busy with our course load. We're busy with, planning and things like that. And sometimes we assume, oh, the students got that. But I just want to encourage you as an educator, as an administrator, to do your job. And when it comes down to really helping students to get prepared for college and career readiness, because sometimes we assume, listen, I've been guilty of this too. We assume, oh, they've got it. They don't need us. And then it comes down to the last few weeks. They haven't even applied to college. They don't have any job or anything lined up. They're just floating. So in order to avoid that floating reality that many students have, so that unfortunately it doesn't contribute to the 1 million to 2 million students that drop out of school every year, right? In order to decrease that achievement gap and to increase the graduation gap, we've got to be more on the ground when it comes down to this, more hands-on, more all-in approach, so that we can guarantee that our students are graduating. I know as principal or as administrator, it's gut-wrenching when you see the students that are signed up to drop out of school and students that just didn't make the cut. And I want to challenge all principals and administrators to do your part when it comes down to decreasing those numbers as much as possible, so that you don't have to own the fact that, I had 400 kids graduate, but I also had 2,000 kids drop out. Like, it's still your school. That's still your data. That's still your reputation as a leader. Are you really getting kids through, or is that really like an area of focus that you really have to start looking at? And I know all leaders do want their students to thrive. So I want to encourage leaders to do what they can to bring down those negative numbers and to increase graduation rates, and to give students, opportunities to make things up, opportunities to really have a second chance if they need it, so that they can cross over and be first generation graduates or whatever it is that they're, aspiring to be. So let's keep going. Let's look at this. I want to look at another article where it's talking about holding students accountable. This is from Indiana University. And so they gave kind of like a little chart for us. So I figured I would share it with you guys. I thought it was kind of cool. So when you're trying to hold your students accountable, define good preparation. So it's not enough to nitpick and to be nagging like, oh, you don't have a pencil again. Oh, you don't have a paper again. Oh, define what good preparation looks like and model it for them, whether it's at the beginning of each quarter, beginning of the year. I would say definitely doing it more than once. And then, of course, reinforcing those good practices that students are implementing when it comes down to this. And then also, it says here to create low stakes accountability tasks, such as students responding to prompts or answering a few quiz questions, because you're starting to get them in the flow of learning and in the flow of, being engaged in your class. And then, of course, it says here, explaining your purpose of accountability strategies to students clearly and explicitly. So explain why you're doing what you're doing. And then planning, using class time to deepen your students' understanding and ability to engage with content. And then, of course, adjust. Students are still coming unprepared, then it's time for you to make some difficult choices. I don't think you should suspend them or write them a referral. I think instead you should either, get on the phone with a parent or guardian and figure out what's going on, or you should sit that student down and ask them what the situation is. Do they need your support? Do they need you to help them with some resources or whatnot? What's going on? Maybe they don't have a pencil or paper, things like that. But I don't think that should be a disciplinary issue. I think that should be an issue where, all hands on deck, for the school, so that we can help get that child through. So those are some things there that she shared about, or Indiana University shared about holding students accountable, that I wanted to share with you guys. And then I wanted to go into this as well. Not only accountable, but then once you've done this, teaching grit, teaching students how to overcome their inner obstacles. And Vicky talked about this, and she says here, self-perception matters. And so this is pretty powerful because, yes, research shows that thoughts and beliefs can be changed. So if students have a habit of negative self-talk, then they'll have a hard time exerting grit. So whenever you're holding students accountable, it's imperative that you also go back and forth with them as to what are they thinking? What are they saying? I remember as a senior, I used to say, I can't all the time. I can't do that. I just can't. I can't do it. And I had a mentor. She knows who she is, Rockstar, love you. And she was a Harvard graduate, 2-time Harvard graduate. And I remember she rebuked me as I was working on the Bill Gates scholarship. And she was like, never say I can't. I will not give you permission to say I can't. You're done saying I can't. Do not say that in my presence. Hey, it works. So, I say that because many of our students are saying that they can't do this. It's too much. It's too hard. It's too difficult. They don't see a way out. They don't see how it can be done. And so they need us to kind of help with that growth mindset and flipping how they're talking so that they can thrive and be successful and accomplish the very things that they think they can't do. So let's keep going. Let's look at this article again. And let's see what else they were talking about when it came down to building grit, teaching grit. So to helping students with optimism so that they can be accountable. And so she talks about, or Lion, they talks about instructing students to become aware of their thoughts using a tool called a grit pie. It's when the student represents a student's, or the pie itself, it represents a student's obstacle, and each slice represents a realistic cause of the problem. So the students are then going to analyze whether the thoughts about the problem are permanent, like I stink at math, I'll never be good at math, or I was distracted by my friends. And then they see, do they blame themselves? So I didn't ask for math help when I was in the class, or do they blame others? Well, the teacher doesn't like me, so that's why I'm not good at math. That's powerful. So then they look at that and then they work towards changing that and flipping those conversations that these students are having, analyzing those thoughts to making them positive and making those negative ones more temporary. And then, of course, she talks about here working with emotions. So you've got to teach students how to work with their emotions, because when you're doing this, it's not enough to just have their thoughts going on, but you've got to help with their emotions. Yes, because some students do come from a traumatic home environment, which does affect how they're going to act in the classroom. Some students are paralyzed when they do math or they do other topics because of just reviewing homework. It's a lot, So something to consider. And then she talks about regulating difficult emotions with students. And the way that you regulate emotions is through suppression. Look at that. And teachers need to be aware of students who might be doing this, gritty or not. So emotion suppression means they push it away rather than dealing with it because, they don't want to ruffle feathers. She talks about now building resilience. When you're helping students with accountability, they do need to be resilient because they have to keep visiting those deadlines. They have to keep visiting those assignments. And so this is very interesting. She said that one way that you can help students with resilience is by using humor. So humor not only fosters a positive emotion, it also connects us to others, and it helps us to maintain a positive social support that students are going to need when they're going for those long-term goals. It's powerful. And then, of course, they share other resources with us. I think that was very interesting. They talked about emotions. I think, sometimes we assume students aren't as emotional, or because maybe we have a different personality type, or we're more passionate or we're less passionate, that our students are like us. But what we're starting to see is that this is not the case. This generation is very different. And so, we've got to cater to their needs and to do what we can to support them, even supporting them emotionally as we're holding them accountable. And when we're holding them accountable, it shouldn't feel like, like they're guilty or like they've done something wrong, just because, they made one simple mistake. We should work on our verbiage as well as leaders as to how we can, build them up after they've been torn down by their own, mistakes or whatever. How do we now build them up? So I want to encourage you that as you're doing that, to make your overall goal, one, to build students up no matter what. So with that said, thanks so much for allowing me to talk with you today about teaching accountability through grit in the math classroom or in any classroom. And so with that said, I want to remind you guys really quickly a couple of announcements. Please follow me when you get a chance on social media. Facebook is Miss India White. LinkedIn is The India White. Twitter is Indy Speak and Teach. Instagram is Indy238. YouTube is India White 123. TikTok is Dr. India White. And Threads is Indy238 as well. With that said, I also wanted to remind you guys of the Grit mini workshop that just launched on Grit or Grassroots Workshops platform. I'm super excited about it. Thank you to those that have invested and to those that are talking about doing it as whether it's a book study, a PLC, something that you're going to do over the summer, whatever. I'm thankful for you. Thank you. Please provide feedback for us so we'll see how it's helping you. Also, upcoming events, Minnesota Council of Teachers of Mathematics will be there this weekend. Also in May, we'll be in Wisconsin. I've got a couple of other places I'll be hitting up. And I'm very grateful for that. And I can't wait to mingle with many of you across this nation. Thank you for your time. Thank you for receiving myself and being gritty and wanting to talk about grit or wanting to talk about equitable practices. I'm here to help you no matter what. And if you want to reach out to me, if you ever have, any interest to whether it's being on the show or you're just wanting to get with me in general, then you can always send me an email at india.white.123@gmail.com. You can also visit my website at www.india-white.com if you're wanting books or blogs or to schedule me for a coming event that you have with your team. So with that said, guys, it's been fabulous. I'm looking forward to seeing many of you this weekend. And no matter what, stay gritty.